I wanted to talk to you today about two initiatives that I think show how COVID is creating new audiences and new impact for research. And those are the, let's see if I can make my slide deck work, the Australian Centre for Public History's Public History Hour and the New Social Contract podcast. And I hope that I'll leave you with a sense of why undertaking research in and with publics matters now more than ever. So the first of these initiatives is one launched by the Australian Centre for Public History, which is based in FAS, and it really functions as the primary hub for public historians in Australia. It's got really strong connections with the galleries, libraries, archives and museums and heritage industries, as well as functioning as a convening platform for the history community more broadly in Sydney. Now, the field of public history is sometimes a bit of a mysterious one to people, but it's premised on the understanding that making sense of the past is something that's done by all sorts of people, not just those within the discipline of history, but also those in other disciplines. And the Centre has members in DAB as well as in law, and of course FAS. But also that making sense of the past is something that is done outside the university by community groups, museums, and by ordinary people who are doing their family history and trying to make sense of something like a pandemic. So therefore, public history is committed to research done in public and with publics. So for the Centre, engagement and research are deeply connected. So when COVID happened in March and lockdown ensued, the Centre was very well placed to quickly do two things. First, to perceive that there was a demand for a way to continue to undertake research and engagement with community around history in lockdown, especially as people were attempting to make sense of what was happening to them, both inside and outside the sector. And second, the Centre was very well placed to establish a platform that served those needs. So the result was the Public History Hour, which is the first initiative I want to talk about briefly. It used the Centre's very well established and well subscribed Facebook page to live stream talks, interviews, research presentations 3 times a week from March until the end of June, and then once a week thereafter. It featured UTS presenters, but it really drew in presenters from across the country and across the discipline. Now, using Facebook was a deliberate decision. It enabled audience members to join the conversation using the comments, so it was very interactive, and it also imposed 0 barriers to entry. So because so much of our community is the galleries, libraries and archives and museum sector, they too were able to participate just by clicking on a link. And the success of the initiative was phenomenal. It really surprised me even. The Public History Hour for those 3 months was the only platform for the entire discipline operating in Australia. And as you can see from this video, which attracted, I've circled it there, 243 likes, 43 views for 1 minute or more, which is a good measure of how many people stayed to watch the whole hour. We had enormous engagement. Now, not only, in fact, across the whole period, 43,000 minutes of our content was viewed, with 2,700 people watching more than 1 minute. So, you know, the entire, a good measure of the entire session. Now, these numbers are obviously far in excess of our weekly seminar engagement. Now, not only did this platform enable the continuation of research activities in the forms of seminars and book launches and all the other kinds of conversation that's so central to the way we undertake our everyday research, not just at UTS, but it did that for the entire Australian discipline. But it also resulted in several outcomes which I think deserve to be highlighted. It's launched this new thing called HatMouse. It's a hashtag. Every Sunday night on Twitter, led by 2 UTS early career researchers, people come together and watch a film at the same time, and they talk about it on Twitter as they're watching. It's become a really new community, and it's connected to a similar initiative in Britain and the United States. So UTS is now leading the Australian representation in that international community. It also became the platform for hosting the Cancelled Australian Historical Association conference, and it it led to this wonderful thing, which was the New South Wales History Week online quiz night, which UTS hosted. And we received every department, every history department at every university in Australia sent in a registration. So it was a great community building night in the context of isolation. And I'll come back to why I think this all matters in a bit. But first I want to talk about a second initiative that arose during lockdown. And this concerns my own work, which for the last 15, nearly 20 years now has focused on the history of politics of knowledge, and particularly universities. And I cannot tell you how deeply uncool it was when I did my PhD on the history of universities. But it turns out that I was onto something, that universities actually really do matter. So in the context of lockdown, and with the aid of the DVCR-funded UTS audio unit, we applied this existing research to the current context and created a 10-part podcast, which was called The New Social Contract. And it aimed to examine the way the relationship between universities, the state, and the public might be reshaped by the crisis we were living through. So really its aim was to step back from the relentlessness of changing daily news cycles and the effects that were rolling out and that continue to roll out, and to think more broadly about the role that universities do and can and need to play in our times. And I think that's one of the things that thinking historically enables us to do in the present, to see that the university has been around for a long time, but it's only survived because it's a dynamic institution that's continually changing, and that we are in one of those moments of change. So the podcasts, they included interviews with our very own Vice Chancellor, hello Attila if you're watching, as well as Tanya Plibersek, the ANU's Mark Howden, who's on the IPCC, and a bunch of other people. And to date, it has generated nearly 10,000 listens. I think those stats are a little bit old, as well as 53,000 reads of 5 companion articles that were published with the conversation. I've been sought out as a regular media commentator, and we've received an amazing listener engagement. That has been one of the most rewarding aspects of this project, including somebody that made an anonymous donation to the International Student Hardship Fund after listening to some international student stories. And it's already leading to new research collaborations, including an invitation to write a report for UNESCO, which was just submitted last week. Now, I think both these initiatives show that sharing research in and with publics generates outcomes. It generates new audiences, it generates a richer research environment, and it generates also new research opportunities. And I think in the process, it also shows that there's a contribution made to an outcome that might even be more important. And that's the social legitimacy of the university, which I think Kate was referencing. With universities in the news and the sector facing huge challenges and change, how we engage with our publics matters now more than ever. Are we experts pronouncing from on high and telling people what's best for them? Or are we institutions with a broader societal mandate engaged with our publics? Now, universities, of course, serve many different kinds of publics. They serve students and graduates and professional associations and industry and government. But universities have historically been considered public institutions for a much more fundamental reason. And that's because they help to foster some of the things that we as a society hold in common. Things that benefit everyone, whether they go to university or not. These have included trusted expert professional services. You've got to be able to trust your doctor, who's not a shyster. An educated citizenry, research that benefits everyone, and very importantly and crucially, an independent and critical civil society. Now, this is where the social legitimacy of our institutions come from. It's a public mission that is, of course, at the heart of UTS 2027. And the reason I wanted to bring these 2 initiatives to your attention today is that I think on a relatively small scale, they show that COVID offers us opportunities to put this mission at the heart of our everyday research activities too.